Welcome back. And tonight on The Big Question, the Kenyan government is still coming to terms with the shocking defeat of Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Amina Mohammed in her bid for the AU Commission chair in Addis Ababa last evening. Now, prior to the election, Amina was deemed the front runner, and the government had spared no expenses in lobbying for the Kenyan candidate. Yet, at the very last minute, she lost to the Chadian candidate. So what went wrong really for Kenya? And Amina, we have international relations experts in studio tonight as we attempt to put into perspective how things went south for Kenya in Addis Ababa. That is Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali on my right, and Kenneth Okwaro. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for making time for us. Talk to us, keep talking to us. That is 22422. You can text us out on Twitter using the hashtag The Big Question. And I'll start with you. We all knew it was going to be a very tight race. I mean, just like any other election. But did it come as a shock to you that Amina lost this? I know you've written about this before, but did it come as a shock to you that Amina lost this?
Well, for me,
from where Kenyans stand and what they saw and how confident the government was.
Well, from my perspective, I did think it was going to be a very stiff race for our candidate, and there were very many variables I looked at. Yes. But I thought that the campaign and had the kind of education that the campaign gave the public in Kenya sort of wasn't as sincere as it should have been, to the extent that we sort of gave people too much hopes, or we were too optimistic about it, because there were so many indicators that could tell you that it was going to be very stiff for her, which perhaps we didn't give as much light as we should have.
So you did not even think she was going to win? I
did think it was going to be difficult for her to win.
All right, Mustafa.
No, I'm not surprised, and there was no reason to be surprised that Amina actually lost to win that seat. And there are a variety of reasons for that. One is that the immediate form of chairperson comes from Anglophone country, and Amina is coming from an Anglophone country, and they really wanted to have somebody from a Francophone country.
But it's country, yes.
That's right. And secondly, South Africa, the SADC bloc wanted to have one of their own, and the reason for that is that they argued that Dr. Lamini Zuma had only served one term, and that they needed another person from the SADC bloc to actually complete the second term, and that's why most of them abstained or did not vote for Ambassador Amina, and making Mohamed Faki to actually get the 2/3 majority.
Right, but do you think it's really about whether we should have had, or they should have had, another French-speaking person at the helm? Already since 2002, since 2000, we've had four actually.
Three of them have been
from French-speaking countries.
Yep.
Only one, Lamini Zuma, was an English-speaking person who served one term.
Correct.
Who served 2 terms. So do you think it was really about that, or is really about regional groupings?
No, when you bring in the issue of Morocco, and I know you're going to talk about that, is Kenya was not very clear on where it stands on the Western Sahara, the Sahrawi Republic, as it was. So Morocco also was working behind the scenes to make sure that somebody from the Francophone country, Morocco being itself a Francophone country, actually winning that seat. And when you look at the countries from the region, Uganda, Burundi, Tanzania, if you look at, they've always been looking at Kenya as occupying so many other positions. You know, it's a Kenyan engineer, Mahabub, who is the head of IGAD. The immediate vice chair, deputy Erastus Mwencha is a Kenyan. And so the other countries, you know, they're also looking at their interest, where their interests are. And they thought that by not having a Kenyan at the AU, then they might serve as a commissioner. Somebody from their country might serve as a commissioner at the African Union, and many other positions in the region.
Hussein, if I may, let us examine our candidate. Perhaps I think if you looked at the idiosyncrasies of our candidate, there was also the person of Amina Mohammed, there was also a problem there, because there has been this roar about her, you know, credentials, how exemplary they were, and I don't disagree with that. She has impeccable credentials, but what kind of experience and credentials were we looking for in this case? I do think, one, as some of the people who did not vote for her did say, that they thought that she was a tad bit too close to the president, and therefore it would have affected her ability to be independent, to the point when if she got to the chairmanship position, then they doubted whether sometimes she would be as, you know, independent as it would have been needed. That was one reason. That
for Africa, that's what you mean?
Yes, for Africa. Because it looked as though there was a very close relationship between the ambassador and the president. That is what I got a lot of people saying. But the other thing was, with regards to our credentials, what were we looking for exactly? We were looking for someone who has got experience with regards to African politics, someone who has got understanding on how the African continent works. And in this case, she had credentials, but a lot of them were credentials that have got to do with the international system broadly. And that is where Faki Mohammed did beat her. Because one, Faki was an insider within the AU. He had been working there as a commissioner. But his president as well was already the chairman of AU. And therefore, they did have a better position in terms of the kind of candidate that they produced, if you look at just the, idiosyncrasies of the person.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to say something else?
Yeah, no, I just want to agree with Okoro that, in such a position, people are not really looking for credentials. Ambassador Amina had brilliant credentials. She could as well be the Secretary General of the United Nations. And unfortunately, this is Africa. Those who are seated at in Addis Ababa were just looking at who could do a bidding for them. And one thing you need to understand is that the way Africans vote, that includes the heads of state, is they don't really look at credentials. They look at personal relationships or regional relationships, and what will be in it for their countries.
Right. Some have talked about the ICC and the role that Amina Mohammed played in the fight against ICC. Do you think this could have worked against her?
Well, it did. There are people who would like us to not talk about this, but she was the face of this onslaught on the ICC for a substantive period since 2013 to today. There are countries who were okay with the exploits we had with the ICC, but there were also countries who were not. For example, Botswana and many other countries, and they could have been many. They were just not talking about it. So I thought she did step. Well, our country did step on some toes when we were trying to deal with our issues at the ICC, and therefore this was substantive in terms of...
Yet it's interesting that some countries that have followed the matter of ICC and have made the intention to withdraw from the ICC still were not really backing Kenya, like Burundi, for example, like South Africa, for example.
I don't think the ICC played a role at all in this case. It might only for Botswana. But for the rest of the other African countries, I don't think it did. Many African countries think that the ICC is a kangaroo court, and therefore they need to get out of it. And to vote down or to not vote Ambassador Amina Mohammed because of ICC would be perceived by Europeans and the ICC itself to be seen that African leaders do not have a position on anything. And so the ICC issue should not really be extended too much.
Right, and we saw the campaigns that were conducted. Jackie Maribe was our reporter there, and in her story today, quoting sources indicating that President Kenyatta was upset that a false sense of might had been reported back to him by the Kenyan lobbying team.
Did
you get that?
Yeah, he should be upset. If I was the president, I'll get very upset. If I was told that we are sure that Ambassador Amina Mohammed was going to win, I'll get really upset. The president gives his blessings, and he expects those technocrats and those people that he has sent to actually do the work and then give him the true picture. Now, this says something about those who are around the president that might have been advising him on this issue of Ambassador Amina. They might not have been giving him the right information.
But Hussein, truth be told, there is a tendency that we develop as Kenyans of glossing around stuff and not being very in-depth with what we do. So there's a lot of superficiality with regards to a lot of things that we do. So I did think that the campaign that was looking for votes for our candidate was not as rigorous as it was supposed to be. You see, if you show up at a country, let's say Burundi, and you're already there in Bujumbura, and you say, please vote for a candidate, the least we can tell you is, we will consider or we will vote for you. It's just like these politicians do in Kenya. They go to Kisumu, they go to whatever, and they say, we'll vote for you.
53.
Yeah, but maybe they're not going to vote for you.
53 countries. They always kept saying, we have gotten the support of country A, B, C, D.
I think they just showed up in those countries, but they did not get a firm agreement or a firm support that we are going to vote for you, and that is what turned out.
Or did they, and is it Morocco, as you're saying, that tilted the whole thing?
Yeah, that may have contributed to that, and as Okwaro is saying, the Fox might have painted too a glossy picture about the potentials of Ambassador Amina actually getting onto that position. And there is this thing called Kenyan exceptionalism. I think Kenyans have got to come out of this. Kenya is not an exceptional country. Kenya is a strong country economically, its military and other institutions, but we're losing that. We're losing that, and so our diplomats need to come down to reality and see what is it that we are not doing right in the region. And countries, including in our backyard, Tanzania and Uganda, are seeing this, that, oh, you guys think you are the regional hegemons, then we're going to show you.
And could that be the reason? And I'll play some clips shortly of what they've been saying. Amina Mohammed and Adan Duale, who are there, we can listen to that.
Good lessons, very, very good lessons. And that appearances are deceptive. I think we're very honest people, so it's difficult to deal with deceptive people.
So there are people within the African continent and even our neighbors who view Kenya as an emerging powerhouse in Africa, and I'm sure they didn't want that. So if we have lost 4 countries in our region, if they voted for us, Amina could have been the chair today.
Mostly talking about Burundi, Uganda and Djibouti. First, what do you make of such a reaction from these leaders? What do you make of it?
Kenya is not an emerging powerhouse. Kenya has been a powerhouse. Kenya is deteriorating in terms of being that powerhouse in the region, and this is what needs to be fixed by our political leaders, technocrats and diplomats. We are losing that grip and shine, and a lot needs to be done.
But did you expect that Uganda will not vote for Kenya?
Yeah, I know.
Or Burundi?
Yeah, there's a language being used there that Uganda refused to vote. They actually abstained. Abstaining does not mean refusing.
And it wasn't in Kenya's favor.
It was not in Kenya's favor because they did not want to, rub Kenya, the wrong way. So abstaining is easier than refusing or voting for the other candidate.
Hussein, I do think on this point that in this kind of diplomatic affairs, states don't come in the international system to show love or to show liking for other states. States come with interests. Our diplomats are supposed to go out there and project our interests. So I think looking for people to like us or looking for people to be very faithful to whatever relationship we have with them sometimes is very deceptive. I think what we are supposed to do is to appeal to the interests of those nations. Like in this case, in this vote, the different states that did not vote for us, perhaps we did not leverage whatever it is that we thought were their interests. I did not give them something that would make them palm up their
Although the government says they got the nod from the states. And if you're talking about interests, these are states from the East African community.
Yes.
Is there a reason you would think they would not? Because this, naturally what we would think is when people go to vote for such positions, these are regional groupings that come with their interests. Why would East African countries from the East African community not vote for Kenya?
Because look at the merits of the position. What were the merits of the position, say for Burundi or say for Uganda or Tanzania? What would Burundi as a state get from Kenya having the AU chair? What would it be? So that is what we needed to have told these people, that this is 1, 2, 3, 4 that you'd get from this whole affair. And I think that is what perhaps did not come out very well in our campaign.
Okay, I'll read one text here, but before I do that, I want to ask this question. Is there an element of surprise when states like Kenya, for instance, which had a candidate, go to such a vote? Is there an element of surprise when they go to such a vote that you did not really read and know that you're not going to get this? Does that happen?
It does. It does happen.
Or would you do that when you're really, really confident?
No, it does happen. It does happen that sometimes you might be very sure that your candidate is going to win. For this case, it was very difficult actually. And if our diplomats and technocrats were telling the President of the Republic, Uhuru Kenyatta, that Amina for sure was going to win, then they were lying to the President. It's very difficult in the context of Africa. I mean, Amina has a brilliant CV, and you know, if I was making that decision, I would choose Amina over Faki, definitely. But there are other interests, political interests, and when it comes to interest, there must be trade-offs. And Okwaro is talking about what is it that Kenya offered the other countries to trade off so that they can support us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Mary Stella Baraza, I read this tweet earlier. I'll read it because of the next question. She said it's not about the language. West Africans are better at the game than East Africans. And she says check the UN jobs. This is about the Francophone countries. I mean, they seem to have carried the day yesterday, clearly. Does that mean Anglophone countries or English-speaking countries have a weaker clout when it comes to AU matters? This is the fourth. Mohamed Faki may not come from West Africa, but it's an English-speaking country, and he was backed by Francophone countries. So this is the fourth person at the AU chairperson's AU Commission.
Look at it this way, Hussein. Look at the regional blocks that come from Francophone or Anglophone sides, and which one would you say are the strongest in terms of addressing their issues, whether it's economic or it's security? Go to West Africa and see how ECOWAS does very well with regards to addressing some of the emerging issues, and they are always very fast. So that alone should give you an indication of how organized sometimes they can get, and that perhaps is a problem with the Anglophone side. And maybe also because the Anglophone side has SADC and East African community that already have, they merge up, or they have an overlap in interest. You have Tanzania this side, also this side. Okay. So I do think the Francophone side usually appear a lot more organized in terms of advancing their interests, and that perhaps played out here.
Yeah, of course, when you look at the way the 15 countries in ECOWAS actually operate, they operate as a team.
Right.
There's more brotherhood, sisterhood, so to speak, in ECOWAS. You know, South Sudan was burning the other day, and you know, countries were dilly-dallying. You know, when Gambia, what's this president? Jammeh decided that he was going to stay on, you know, led by Nigeria, they just pointed the finger at him and said, we're going to remove you. If that happened in Uganda here, you know, Yoweri Museveni decides to stay on, you know, IGAD will not even dare to say
or
no,
Burundi.
Or Burundi for that matter.
Okay, let's take a look at what you're saying on Twitter. But first, 22422. Okema Francis, and you can note this, I mean, you may respond to them. Okema Francis from Malaba border says, was this seat for AU chairperson a must for Ambassador Amina Mohamed to win? I'm worried at how our leaders are judging the other regional countries who exercised their democratic rights to vote. David says, Amina, congratulations for getting that fight assigned. We are yet to believe in women leaders. Time to change that philosophy as Africans. Although Dlamini was the immediate former chairperson. Mike in Kasarani says, I strongly believe Amina lost because of the emotional withdrawal of our troops from South Sudan. It must have been a tough call convincing African Union that we care about Africa when just the demotion of a commander of our own alone was more important than peace in South Sudan. What would you say to that?
Yeah, that's an important point. That first of all, Kenya should not have. Kenya made a very hasty decision to withdraw from South Sudan, and that I know many across Africa thought that Kenya was trying to, you know, settle something with international actors. United Nations and other actors outside of Africa, and leaving South Sudan to suffer for that matter.
Yes.
And that didn't go down well with a number of countries in the region. Kenya should have stayed put for some time. That did not work very well for Kenya.
All right. This is what you're saying on Twitter. If we can have a quick look at your tweets. Right, we have Kirwa says, Ambassador Amina's candidature should have been a national issue and not a Jubilee project. I wish her well. William Munga, reaching out to foreigners for support but ignoring Raila, Museveni and Magufuli. You first get home support before you lobby abroad. Churchill Michael, East Africa community is not ticking. Why raise the bar against ourselves to our shame and at global level? Francis Limera, still wondering, why couldn't we front the present African Union deputy the outgoing one that is, who would have been a strong candidate than Ambassador Amina Mohammed? And Pauline Masese, reality check, how does Kenya fare on foreign relations, especially with its neighbors? I'll let you respond to some of those.
Right. I do think, one, that there's a gender issue that somebody had tried to bring up, which I don't think really was a big issue here. But I think that as Kenyans, we tend to focus a lot on our national politics, and sometimes it plays out in the international arena. This was going to be a prestigious something for us. And this is the time when each and everyone in Kenya who is influential in the international community should have been worked up to go and do whatever it is for us.
So for that person saying you should have talked to the opposition?
I think so, because each and everyone, there's Kalonzo Musyoka, there is Raila Odinga, we have two presidents who are still alive, who have got very many contacts. I think we could have harnessed all these networks if we did talk to everyone. I did think that to some extent this looked a lot like the project of the ruling coalition, and perhaps I think they erred there.
All right. I don't think so. I seek to differ with you. Yes, differ with you.
Yeah.
The candidate Amina Mohammed going there was not a project of Jubilee. It just happened that she was the foreign affairs minister, and Jubilee that is in power. I don't think there would have been any value addition if CORD came in, or Kalonzo Musyoka, Raila Odinga came in and supported, or rather supported the. In fact, they should have done that even without being told. Yeah, I'm seeing, you know, there's this debate now which is going on Twitter, on Facebook, that you know, Ambassador Amina Mohammed wanted to be put there by Uhuru Kenyatta so that they can, you know, should anything go wrong in our elections this May, then Ambassador Amina Mohammed would do something. I mean, all this kind of talk and debate is pretty much pedestrian. Ambassador Amina Mohammed was simply put there because what suggested was put there by the Kenyan government because she was a foreign affairs minister. Right. And it's that position, docketed as foreign affairs minister, that normally would make it very easy for other heads of state to actually vote that person to become the AU commissioner.
So as we wind up, what next for Kenya? Does this weaken Kenya's position continentally?
You know, we went all in with all our resources, with all our media. If we ever do such a kind of a thing, that we say we are going to get it and we are going to use everything that we have, and we come back with this kind of an outcome, it does say something about us. It gives the impression that we are not able to rally people behind us. And that is important, especially when we will go back later, when we want to negotiate trade deals or investment deals, because it says something about our ability to negotiate and get people behind us. So I think it did
weaken Kenya's position.
Yes.
No, it did not. It just taught us a lesson. And that's a very good lesson Kenya was taught, that you cannot go onto the international scene and try and negotiate without offering anything in return. And that we need diplomats who think, who can do this job and do it very well. Sometimes the kind of people that we send out there, they're not just character, but also their CV is questionable.
Okay, Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali and Kenneth Okwaro, both international relations experts, thank you so much for making time for us. Tonight, keep talking to us, 22422. You can tweet us using the hashtag The Big Question. We're back after this.